This is Goodsprings, and this is just one of 183 locations found in Fallout New Vegas. So let's go and explore every single one, shall we? But first, who are you? Well, you're an unlucky courier about to be gifted with a bullet to the head by Mr. Fancy Pants over here, and given one of the most coolest dialogue lines in Fallout history.
Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
Rest in peace, Matthew Perry. You wake up at the sight of old Doc Mitchell after he helps you regain consciousness with assistance of a helpful robot that digs you out of your grave. You use the Vitomatic machine to do all your special stats, checks are done to see how the Wasteland has rotted your brain, and then he just kicks you out with a vault suit and a weapon into our first location. Stop! If you look around the place, you'll notice a shop, an abandoned school, and a few ranches. So it's pretty clear that this is kind of meant to be our starter town. We make our way to the local saloon, where we'll meet a woman named Sunny Smiles. She offers to teach us how to shoot. Man, I suck.
Nice shot.
And after our quick lesson, she suggests heading out to hunt some geckos, which brings us to our next stop. This looks like the main source of clean water for Goodsprings, but it's not exactly safe. And as you approach the area, you'll see a settler fighting for her life.
Holy moly.
Once that's settled, I did a bit of trading in the town, and I wanted to explore the abandoned school. I can see my training with Sunny Smiles really paying off on this one. As it's very close by, we might as well pop to where we basically died, Goodsprings Cemetery. Now this cemetery is really special. Not only is this the place where you were shot, but every grave has a unique name. The attention to detail is actually really impressive. From the burnt cigarettes from when Benny was there, to the distance where you can see New Vegas, giving you what there is to come. But what most interestingly of all, it's haunted. That's right, if you turn down your audio, you'll be able to hear these whispers. Spooky. After doing a fetch quest for Sunny, she mentions going to talk to Trudy at the saloon. But I wanted to see what this guy was up to. It seems like he wanted me to go and save his girlfriend on top of the cliff, which is of course infested by geckos. But it seems like it was all a trick, as he was trying to rob me afterwards. On our way back to Goodsprings, if we slightly veer off the path and into the hills, you'll find Goodsprings Cave. It's a pretty simple location containing a couple of coyotes and some bark scorpions. This is where you'll find some of the residents and even a bright follower. This is clearly designed in mind for a low-level courier for some early game loot. Back at the saloon in Goodsprings, it seems that Trudy is having some issues with a group called the Powder Gangers. Just some low-level gang that broke out of an NCR prison, and they basically just spend all day looting and threatening Wastelanders. I don't really have time for that behavior. Wait, what? Oh my god, I forgot I had this mod on. Difficult Pete! Okay, note to self, do not mess with him. Now if we take a look at the map, it's clear that Vegas is actually not too far away from us. In fact, there's a shortcut right there. So why not just go through it, right? Well, the developers were on the ball on this one, and they placed a bunch of high-level enemies called Cazadors in the area. Think Deathclaws, fast, agile, and dangerous, but with wings. Luckily, Victor is here to save the day. After a quick drink break, why not try the next route, going to Vegas this way? So if we just follow the path, we'll stumble onto a lone shack. Now believe it or not, this was actually a skydiving school, which would explain why there's a plane right outside of the shack. But overall, nothing too crazy on this area, mainly a place for loot and a place to find your first blue star cap. Just to introduce to you this new collectible, but you have no idea who you have summoned picking this up. It does contain a couple of explosive crates, which is probably owned by the Powder Gangers who loiter around in this area. And speaking of Powder Gangers, up the road there's more of them. not too far away from this location, there is Powder Ganger Camp North. There's nothing really noted here, it just seems to be powder gangers that chill here. So let's just concentrate to the path to Vegas, where we will stop by the mining settlement of Sloan. This was originally a pre-war mining camp, but it is now controlled by the NCR. And like most places in the Mojave, they're basically shoving a flag here and saying it's theirs. Now the camp itself was mainly used for limestone, which the NCR would ship off to Boulder City to reinforce their barricades. But it seems like they're having a bit of a situation.
Hold up. There are death claws all over the damn place north of here. I'd turn back if I were you.
He tells us that death claws are all over the place up the road, and that we shouldn't go up there. There isn't a whole lot else to see here, though you will come across a friendly mole rat named Snuffles. You can patch him up for a little bit of karma and a boost to your reputation. This is also where you can pick up a recipe for the infamous Deathclaw omelette, though let's be real here, you really shouldn't be picking fights with Deathclaws right now. So let's go and see what the situation is like. With the game clearly blocking us from going north, the only real option we have is to head south. But along our way back, you may notice a landmark. This is the Yangtze Memorial. This massive landmark was built to commemorate a major American offense on Chinese soil during the War of 2074, honoring the soldiers who died in conflict. These days though, it's clear that the monument has seen better days. Nearby there is an abandoned shack worth checking out, and inside you'll actually find the only dog street in the entire game. Just a bit further down you might bump into a little area called the Devil's Gullet. This spot is more of an environmental location. Basically it's just one big large hole. There's nothing really important here aside from a sunset sarsaparilla star nearby one of the boxes. And you might get a couple of coyotes that might attack you, but I guess I was lucky here because they didn't spawn. With that wrapped up, we loop back to Good Springs Cave. So let's continue south. Oh, looky here. Looks like we got ourselves another powder ganger camp. It seems like a bunch of them are hanging around, messing around with some dynamite. There seems to be a note explaining that there isn't really much travelers to loot, so they're thinking about heading towards north to the strip. Which is not the best idea, but just remember that taking anything counts as stealing, as I discovered. As the sun sets, if we go up a hill to the east, you will spot a small caravan perched on a hill. It looks like someone had turned it into a makeshift radio station before the war, broadcasting conspiracy theories about corruption and evils of the government. The government evil? Not in my Fallout lore. They've always been so trustworthy and stable, right? Now all that's left is scattered junk and some bleak graffiti saying, "Everyone is gone. I am all alone. Let it all end." You can find a copy of the Wasteland Survival Guide here, which I am not sure how Moira's book got here in the Mojave, but hey, must have been popular. And of course, another Sunset Sarsaparilla Star cap. You can also sleep here, which is a nice spot before heading to... It seems this town has been completely overrun by escaped convicts, and a soldier warns us not to go any further. But we're the courier, and a couple of humans with guns aren't gonna stop us.
It's your ass. Don't say you weren't warned.
The town itself is split in half, one side where the NCR soldiers are holed up and the other where the main settlement lies. Primm is often called the poor man's New Vegas, with one casino and one hotel still intact. They also have this awesome roller coaster which, if you could download the right mods, you can actually get working, so you can do some really gnarly kill opportunities with that. Inside the Vicky and Vance casino, most of the townfolk are holed up, too scared to leave with the convicts running around. Naturally, they look towards the courier to deal with their problems.
Well, for that, your best bet is going to be talking to Deputy Beagle.
Let's not forget the Nash residence either, where you can find your first potential companion, though he does need a couple of bits before you can get him up and running. After rescuing Deputy Beagle, he finally gives us a lead on the man who shot us in the head, and according to him, the guy headed towards a place called Novak, which is quite a trek from here, meaning that we have quite a few more stops before we get there. I don't even know why this counts as a location. There's literally not much here besides a couple of scorpions, bent tin cans, and 2 star caps. Honestly, this feels like more of a place where the NCR just chill and crack open a Sunset Sarsaparilla and kill time when they're bored. But anyways, let's move on. If we keep heading up the hills, you'll find a tucked hidden away location called the Mesquite Mountains Crater. Now this isn't just any old crater. This was formed during the Great War, and according to Mr. House, 77 atomic warheads were heading towards New Vegas. He claims that his systems managed to remotely disarm 59 of them, while another 9 were shot down by his big laser cannons on the Lucky 38. But unfortunately the rest got through, which explains this giant hole and all the glowing ghouls around it. Inside the crater is a location called Hell's Motel, once home of Dr. Rotson. But it kind of looks like he's taking a bit of an eternal nap right now, maybe caused by this crazed robot who also attacked me. If you leave the crater and head directly towards the nearby landmark, you'll soon come across the Mesquite Mountain campsite.
Hello there.
Now there is quite a few rad scorpions in this location, and any large ones might be a problem for a low-level courier. Maybe not encouraging to actually explore here, but a couple of explosives always helps. Here we can see a couple of tents, another copy of the Wasteland Survival Guide, and 3 graves. But apart from that, there's nothing too crazy here. A little bit further down, or back onto the road, you'll see a building with a petrol station nearby. Much like the campsite, this rest stop is also crawling with rad scorpions. Now the real draw here though is what you can find inside. It's a simple little spot but worth looting. There's a magazine, another Sunset Sarsaparilla star cap, and some ammo just outside. You can also uncover a secret stash left behind by the mayor of Nipton for a nice bit of early game loot. One pretty cool detail here is the graffiti on the garage wall that reads, "Where's New Canaan anyways?" The text shows up even if you don't have the DLC installed, suggesting that the developers already had this expansion planned during the base game's development. With that wrapped up, it's time to now move on and check out that giant landmark. We have now reached the edge of the Mojave map, and this spot is actually pretty important in terms of lore. The NCR of course control the area, and right outside is the Unification Monument. It represents the alliance forged between the New California Republic and the Desert Rangers of Nevada, who merged forces to better stand against Caesar's Legion in the Mojave. The outpost itself acts as a checkpoint for traders moving in and out of the region. Unfortunately though, thanks to the escaped convicts and all sort of dangers on the roads, many caravans end up stuck here, unable to continue their routes. Inside the outpost, you'll find a barracks and a small bar. It's here you can speak to Rose of Sharon Cassidy, or Cass for short, a potential companion. But more importantly, one of the rangers mentions that they need a hand dealing with some critters down the road. Which conveniently takes us to 2 locations nearby, which is the Ivanpah Dry Lake and the Nevada Highway Patrol Station. I am really not sure why this is a location. Look at it. There's nothing here. It even shows a settlement icon, but no one lives here. You know, all it's missing is a tumbleweed. Can future me just add it in post-production? There we go. Now this spot is a little bit more interesting because it's the home to a gang called the Jackals. It is a bit of a shame that Obsidian didn't take the time to really flesh them out. Much like the Khans, which we'll talk about later on, the Jackals originated from Vault 15, but unlike the Khans, they didn't really have much development. This hideout is where one of their leaders can be found, which though, to be honest, is not that impressive. Inside there's nothing too crazy to loot, but you can spot another cool reference, some graffiti that reads, "I wish I was at the Sierra Madre," which is again another nice nod to the Dead Money DLC, which is shown even if you haven't installed the mod. Once you've dealt with the critters nearby the Nevada highway station, you can report back to the Mojave outpost. But before leaving one last time, you can meet a very pale woman called Ranger Ghost, who sends you to check out about the town of Nipton, worried that it's been attacked.
Traffic from there on the roads. And while I can explain that away, the smoke from the town I can't.
Which means that it's now time to head east. Just outside of the Mojave outpost, you will find a cave, the Morning Star Cavern. Once you step inside, you'll run into some Night Stalkers. They can be pretty dangerous, but since most of them are the young ones, it's pretty manageable. Deeper into the cave, you'll find some explosive crates along with a body of a dead mercenary, so nothing too crazy. If we leave and slightly head around the corner, you'll come across two new locations, called the Crescent Canyon East, and it leads all the way to the west. This area is flooded with radiation, and also inhabited by golden geckos. The radiation can be quite lethal here at 4 rads per second, though to counteract it, you can actually find an advanced radiation suit, which is rather rare and also pretty useful in this location. But let's dial it back a bit, as we need to now head our way to Nipton. Heading back on the main road away from Nipton though, you'll come across Nipton Road Pit Stop. It seems that a bunch of jackals were waiting to ambush any travelers heading down this road, but as we came from the canyons, it looks like we can get the jump on them. There's nothing else really around here, so let's head towards this flag, where we're back at the useless desert area of Ivanfar Racetrack. Much like the dry lake previously, it has nothing here, except for some ants and a duffel bag. How exciting. Up on the hills, you'll find another location called Jackrabbit Springs, though this is a pretty rough location as there are a couple of super mutant masters around, possibly armed with miniguns. It might just be best to steer clear from this area for now, unless you feel confident to take them on. The loot here isn't too exciting either. You will find a stealth boy and some Hydra. By the way, if I haven't mentioned this already, but around 95% of the locations in this game are actually real locations in the Mojave in real life. So props for them for making this game quite realistic. Okay, that's enough messing around. Shall we head on to Nipton, shall we? Now, Nipton was a bit of a dodgy town, but not enough to feel unwelcome. It was home to outcasts, ex-gamblers and escaped convicts who wanted to leave their pasts behind and settle down. Unfortunately, their luck finally ran out when the Legion ransacked the town, crucifying powder gangers and ex-cons alike. The town's mayor, Joseph B. Stain, had worked closely with the powder gangers for trade. Driven by greed and a lack of morals, he attempted to work with the Legion and the NCR too, thinking he can play both sides. But when you work with a tyrannical faction like the Legion, the plan rarely ends well. Vulpes Inculta, leading a group of Frumenteri, took the town hostage and forced the residents into a twisted lottery. Anyone who refused to participate was executed. And this lottery was pretty special. It decided if whether you lived, died, or suffered. Anyone unlucky would receive pain, crucifixion, and decapitation. And if you were third place, you were enslaved. The runner-up can actually be found in a building called Boxcars, who had his legs smashed. But at least he survived, right?
Yeah.
And the winner was left free, unfortunately. And that is where you come in to restore balance.
Yeah! Who won the lottery?
Hey, I'm just keeping Fallout tradition here. After the raid, you will have option to speak with Vulpes and report the horrors he had committed to the NCR.
Lesson that Caesar's Legion taught here, especially any NCR troops you run across.
Now within Nipton, you can find plenty of homes to explore, each hiding some wacky stuff like booby traps, caged bark scorpions, the NCR home, oh geez, and the main town hall. And inside you can find more frag mine traps and Legion dog patrols, and at the top, the mayor's room, where you can find some useful loot. Leaving Nipton, you can continue your quest east, and if you wander slightly off the road and into the hills, you might come across Bradley's shack. It is just a small shack, but it has a really unique feel. It has military posters and a pre-war flag, suggesting whoever Bradley was might have had some ties to the military, or even the Brotherhood of Steel or Enclave factions. Be careful though, because it is trapped. And don't expect anything good here in terms of loot. This could potentially be the Jackal's hideout, as they are spotted patrolling around here. But this isn't the only building nearby though, because just east lies the Legion's safe house. This safe house is only accessible if you have a liked reputation with the Legion, so unless you're doing a Legion playthrough, your chances are pretty low accessing this safe house. But for those who do, you'll find a fairly average home, a couple of beds, plenty of storage space, and a set of Centurion armor. And every 3 days, a Legion soldier will stop by to check in, offering you some supplies like stealth boys, cat eye, and a few magazines. It's not a bad safe house overall, except for one small problem: you're right next to an old nuclear test site. Nothing much to say about this place really. It's obviously a place they used for nuclear testing. All the signs are there. Ghouls? Check. Radiation? Check. A massive hole? Check. An observation area? Yup. Apparently this was actually a real location in the 1950s, which I must say is actually pretty cool. And as we are here, we might as well check out the last location in this little area. On the outskirts of the Mojave, you'll come across the wreckage of an old Enclave vertibird. And of course, with modern technology comes with OP sentry bots. It's probably best not to take these guys on without a really high powerful weapon, or if you have high stealth. But if you are able to take them on or sneak past, you are able to pick up a Tesla beaten prototype, which is a unique version of the Tesla cannon. With that detour done, it's time to head back onto the road and head north, where you'll eventually come across a farm. This place has a lot more lore than it first appears. On the surface, it looks like a dry, quiet farm with a couple of bighorners and Brahmin, but something tragic happened here. It used to be a family farm, 2 parents and their child. One day the parents went to Camp Searchlight to gather supplies, but they never came back. Worried, the kids set out to find them, only to discover that the Legion had sabotaged the camp, leaving it heavily irradiated. There, he found his parents, now feral ghouls, and was forced to put them down before they attacked him. He returned to the farm and he tried to keep it running, but the guilt and trauma began to eat away at him. Eventually, he started to believe that the animals were plotting against him, and in his paranoia, he set the farm on fire while he was still inside. All that remains are scattered diary pages, his skeleton, and 2 graves, presumably his parents. A dark but brilliant piece of environmental storytelling from Obsidian here. Anyways, let's keep heading north. Nearly back at the main road, you'll spot a small camp occupied by a couple of Vipers. Much like the Jackals, they are another undeveloped gang in the Mojave, and it looks like they've set up shop here. There's not much of interest beyond that, though that it is worth noting that the Legion are pretty neutral towards them, which kind of makes sense. It's not worth getting into trouble with them. Following back on the South Main Road, you'll come across a medium-sized ranch called Wolfhorn Ranch. It's one of my personal favourite spots. There's actually nothing too wild here, and as the name suggests, it's simply just a solid farm with some food and a bit of loot inside the shack. But what makes this place great, at least in my playthroughs, is that it works perfectly as a makeshift player home. You've got some decent storage in there, a bed, and food that replenishes over time. It's also a nice halfway point on the road to Vegas. From here, we do need to loop back because back at Nipton, there's actually a train track that cuts through the hills and leads all the way back to our starting area. And along that route, you'll find plenty of locations. The Coyote Den will be the first. It's just a hole with a family of coyotes inside. If you decide to be a menace to nature and take them out, you'll find a Bright Follower, a cult that we will soon get onto. Just next to the den is the Hidden Supply Cave. You will need a lockpick of 50, but once accessed, you won't actually find much in terms of loot. But you will find some massive crates. These crates can be used later on in a mission called the Wheel of Fortune, as they contain radiation suits, and according to the runner-up of the lottery, he explains that the Legion were hiding loot in this cave. Heading back to the Coyote Den and up the tracks, you will find a dirt road to the left, which leads to the Prospector's Den. Approaching the area, you will come across a few jackals who seem to have taken over, possibly turning it into a new base of operations. Judging by the scattered bodies of the prospectors, it looks like their takeover happened fairly recently. If you want to, you can actually turn this into a temporary player home, as you'll find a bed to sleep in, some lockers for storage, and a reloading bench at the back. If we head back onto the train tracks, you'll eventually bump into the emergency service train yard. This isn't really an exciting location. You can't actually access the building, and all there is a bunch of mattresses around. It's probably implying that there are traders or maybe powder gangers just chilling out here in the evenings. If you head east from here, you'll come across Prim Pass. It might seem like a handy shortcut, but this is definitely not the safest route, as there's a blind Deathclaw patrolling the area. And don't think you can sneak past it either, as its perception is actually stronger than the standard Deathclaw. In the area, you will find a bright follower and a body of a dead prospector. It's best just to avoid this path for now, unless of course you have enough explosives to slow the beast down. So instead, let's just head back onto the railroad and keep heading up. Seems like there's some more powder ganger camps, south and east not too far away from here. This makes a lot of sense, as the NCR correctional facility is pretty visible from here. It seems that they graffitied one of the areas saying fight apathy or don't, and Steve was here. And in the east, well, kinda nothing. They just vibing.
Aha!
Just up ahead is the Powder Gangers HQ, the NCR Correctional Facility. It was once under NCR control, and it served as both a prison and a labor force. Convicts were put to work maintaining NCR supply lines, mostly on the railroads, using dynamite to clear out the areas and rubble. The NCR kept shipping in prisoners from across all their territory, but when the Legion attacked Hoover Dam, the NCR numbers thinned, and that's when things unraveled. Samuel Cook, who would become the Powder Gangers' first leader, staged a breakout. Armed with the same dynamite and tools they'd been forced to use on the railroads, the convicts overpowered the NCR guards. Afterwards, Cook left the prison, and Eddie took over as the leader, who organized the survivors into a gang known as the Powder Gangers. The facility itself has the look of a standard prison. It's got watchtowers, heavy gates, and a fortified yard. It's a pretty solid base for a post-apocalypse, I would say. And even now, the NCR doesn't have the manpower to retake it. At least not yet. You can trigger a mission that eventually leads to a raid on the base, but whether you take it on is up to you. Inside, you'll find the visitors center, the prison yard, cell blocks, and the admin building. It's worth checking out, provided you're not already vilified by the Powder Gangers, and if you are, you'll need to wear an outfit as a disguise to sneak your way inside. I personally told the NCR about it all and got them raided. It seems like they have got the manpower now to take it down. Anyways, we were meant to head to Novak to find Mr. Fancy Pants, so let's continue our journey from there. Heading north from Wolfhorn Ranch, just a little further up the road, you'll come across a Legion raid camp. Remember the runner-ups from the Nipton lottery? This is where they ended up, captured and enslaved by the Legion. This is probably one stop away from the Legion main headquarters, which we'll get onto a lot later. But unfortunately, the slaves didn't spawn for me. I assume I needed to activate the mission to save them, as that is a choice. The camp itself is fairly simple, made up of a couple of storage tents and a handful of Legionnaires, with a patrol nearby.
Degenerates like you belong on a cross.
From there, let's head back onto the main road, and a short way off to the left, you'll find our next stop, the Walking Box Cavern. Now, we fought Night Stalkers once, we can fight them again. because inside this cavern, you could bag yourself some higher tier loot. I'm looking at that reinforced combat armor. And that's really about it in this cavern, but there is another cavern nearby which is one of the most dangerous areas in the game that makes the walking box seem like a walk in the park. Yeah, you get it? You get it? Please don't dislike the video. This is the Deadwind Cavern. Honestly, don't even think about coming here unless you're a really high level, because this place is absolutely crawling with deathclaws. And not just the regular kind. Inside lurks the legendary Deathclaw, one of the toughest enemies in the entire game. And if you're not prepared, it will tear you up into pieces. But as with all dangerous locations in Fallout, with great risks comes with great rewards. Exploring the cavern can net you some really good loot, including a unique 40mm grenade machine gun called Mercy, and a set of T-45D power armor taken from a body of a fallen Brotherhood of Steel soldier. Definitely one to save for the late game when you're much more prepared to fight Deathclaws. If you do manage to get past maybe one or two of them and continue up the road, you will be able to come across Harper's Shack. Now who's Harper? Who knows? It's just a shack in the middle of nowhere. Maybe a good location for a temporary player home, if you can avoid the Deathclaws, as it has quite a few workbenches. Just maybe not for a low level courier. This place was probably used by a Viper gang, as you can find them not too far away from here. So let's just get away from all this danger and move back onto the road. Along the way, you'll come across a barricaded trader park called Ranger Station Charlie. It's one of many NCR ranger stations scattered across the Mojave. Originally known as Shady Pines Trailer Park, the NCR repurposed it as a safe house for rangers to monitor and scout the surrounding areas. More specifically, they just want to check up on what the Legion are doing. Sadly, if you do progress far enough in the main quest, you'll learn that the Legion has slaughtered and trapped the place, leaving behind only a few audio recordings for anyone to stumble across. Continuing along the main path, you'll eventually reach a fairly iconic location, Novak. The first thing you'll probably notice is the giant dinosaur, Dinky the T-Rex, and he's perched next to the Dino Delight Motel. Originally used to attract guests in the pre-war era, it now serves as a landmark for residents and travelers passing through their way to New Vegas. The town's name comes from the motel sign, Novak, which is missing the vacancy part, which is quite fitting for Fallout. Kind of reminds me of Arafu in Fallout 3. Novak has everything that you need: a trader, a doctor, a place to sleep, T-Rex plushies, and some memorable characters. There's Daisy, a former Enclave Vertibird pilot from Fallout 2, Mr. Nobark, your local crazy, and two key figures, Craig Boone, a potential companion, and Manny Vargas, both former NCR Rangers who protect the town. Now Manny seems to know where Benny went, but before he helps you, he wants help in return. He wants you to go deal with some ghouls at a nearby test site. Sounds simple enough?
As long as the ghouls are out of there, that's good enough for me.
If you head west and follow the trail of ghouls, you'll eventually reach the Repcon test site. Repcon, or the Rocket Engineering Products Company of Nevada, was originally an aerospace testing facility. Unfortunately, corruption and poor management led to the company's downfall. Mr. House, the owner of Robco Industries, eventually stepped in and purchased the site, taking advantage of the Repcon's failures in nuclear waste disposal. Using the facility's technology, Robco went on to develop the plasma rifle, which we often see in the Mojave. After the war, the facility was abandoned, leaving only behind the remnants of its past and feral ghouls. Novak did scavenge the site at one point, but it became too dangerous. But not just because of the ghouls, but it was due to the Bright Brotherhood, who have taken up residence there. We have encountered them a few times in our previous locations. Now their goal is to reach space using the remaining rockets left in this location. Inside the facility, you'll find a research laboratory, a basement overrun with nightkin, and for some reason paintings of Tenpenny Tower from Fallout 3. I don't know how that ended up here. What you do here is up to you. You can either aid the Bright Brotherhood or you can just wipe them out entirely. Either choice satisfies Manny.
This is hopeless.
And if you are enjoying the video so far, I would highly appreciate a like on this video. We're trying to reach 2,000 likes, which is a pretty ambitious goal, but I trust you guys will be able to do it. Manny will then direct you to head up north to Boulder City, where you can find the man who shot you. But before we start heading north, there's a little bit of exploration to do. To the east of Novak, you can find a toxic dump site, which is probably a tipped over waste disposal truck that was back when Clark Field was operational, which can be found south of here. This small power plant is not only crawling with golden geckos, but it's home to a rather interesting NPC called Mr. Radical. He was a scavenger, eager to test out his radiation suit, but unfortunately, it didn't go too well. He left the plant suffering from radiation poisoning and made his way to a local junk dealer for a cure. Sadly, by the time he returned, he had perished. Rest in peace. This is where you can find the Isotope 239 agent for the Bright followers if you do choose to help them. Just close by to the west, another location can be spotted called the Highway 95 Vipers encampment. We met this gang before and it seems like they're using this spot, much like any other gang, to stop merchants from the area. Nothing really much to say apart from a good place for easy loot and another star cap. Just a little bit south from here, you'll come across a destroyed car known as the Wrecked Highwayman. Now this is a pretty cool nod to Fallout 2, where players could obtain a drivable vehicle called the Highwayman. JSawyer, the project director of Fallout New Vegas, has confirmed that this is a wrecked car that actually belonged to the Chosen One from Fallout 2. He had also considered including the tanker fob, a key item from the main quest in Fallout 2, which was unfortunately left out. What remains are some microfusion cells, which was needed to power the car in the game. Personally, a fantastic little reference for fans of the series. Also go watch my video about Fallout 2. Not too far away from the Wrecked Highwayman, we have Snyder's Prospector's Camp. A small dilapidated shack with, well, nothing much to write home about. There's a star cap though, so you can put that towards your collection. And you may get a prospector wandering around the place. Now the last location before we start diverting too far away is the Brock Flower Cave. This cave isn't nearly as dangerous as the others we've been to, and assuming that you haven't just rushed straight to Novak, you should have a decent level to take on some giant rats. Or if you pick up the Wild Wasteland perk, the Rousers. Rodents of unusual size, which are far tougher than your standard rats. But not only that, it also holds the unique varmint rifle called the Rat Slayer. And it's fully decked out with night vision and a silencer. It's like the ultimate beginner weapon for any sniper build. Alright, if we head back to Novak, and instead of continuing north, we'll veer to the east. And this is where we're going to be stopped by an NCR ranger. He explains that the Legion have taken over Nelson, and unfortunately some of the NCR soldiers have been crucified as well. He wants us to take out the suffering NCR soldiers. And well, you've just got the Rat Slayer, right? So you might as well put it to some use. If we make our way down to Nelson, you'll find the classic Legion treatment of the town. Yeah, it's burnt to the ground. Nelson was once an NCR town and a military camp, strategically positioned between here and Camp Forlorn Hope, just up north. But unfortunately, the Legion, under the command of the mighty Caesar, moved in. A veteran called Dead Sea led the attack, aiming to demoralize the NCR troops in the area. From this location, the Legion will now plan an attack on Forlorn Hope in the future. And also, fun fact, if you go around, you can actually destroy the generators, which then turns off the power inside. I'm not really sure what this does, but it's a nice touch, I guess. Now, there is plenty more to explore down south, but we'll save that for later, because now we're going to head up north to go and visit a sweet old lady. Now, you remember Mr. Radical? Well, this is where he traded his gear. This is the home of Old Lady Gibson, who spent much of her life scavenging alongside her husband, including a trip to the Repcon test site, which explains the missing O from the sign. After her husband passed away, she retired from scavenging and focused on trading and selling her junk. You'll also notice that she does have a couple of dog companions. It probably beats being the crazy cat lady. It's a handy stop if you're looking for junk, miscellaneous items, or repairs for any weapons and armor. And as you leave, you might spot a large building looming in the distance. This is Helios 1. A massive Poseidon energy facility that once provided solar power to New Vegas and the national grid. But it wasn't just about renewable energy. It was also a secret government weapon project. The US Army was working on a project called Archimedes. It was an orbital bombardment laser satellite, but it was all top secret, hidden for the fear that China might learn from its development. But of course, after the Great War, it all halted. But that's when Elder Elijah and the Brotherhood of Steel took control of the facility. They were making really slow progress, and what made it worse is that they started a war with the NCR. For 2 long years, soldiers were being thrown at each other, and with heavy losses on the Brotherhood of Steel side, Father Elijah still refused to abandon the plant. That is when the NCR launched Operation Sunburst. Despite superior technology and training, the Brotherhood of Steel were heavily outnumbered, nearly 10 to 1. They retreated to the bunkers nearby, where they still haven't fully recovered their numbers. Over half of the chapter died defending Helios 1, and Elder Elijah vanished without a trace. Now it's under NCR control, and the facility is slowly being restored. But before the Brotherhood Steel retreated, they put the entire plant on lockdown and left a bunch of security robots patrolling the main power controls. Now, Helios 1 is a massive area worth exploring. You'll find the power plant itself and the solar collection tunnel filled with robots defending the facility. Now, for any reason, if you want to decide to activate Archimedes, it will kill all the NCR soldiers nearby, but it will reward you with a moderately powerful weapon. Interestingly, the Legion will arrive 2 days later, not to use the plant itself, but just simply to prevent the NCR from controlling it again.
Degenerates like you belong on a cross.
So, where did the Brotherhood Steel retreat to? Let's go find out. Just to the west, a path leads into an area crawling with bark scorpions. This is Scorpion Gulch. This is the path that the Brotherhood of Steel used to retreat from Helios 1, and on the route you'll find the remains of a few Wastelanders scattered around. A clear sign that this place is pretty dang dangerous. Now, despite the danger, it is a good spot for loot and collecting a couple of rad scorpion glands to sell if you need it. As we move out of Scorpion Gulch, we will come across a big empty piece of land called Hidden Valley. Hold on a minute. Oh my god. I forgot I had this on. It was once a peaceful stretch of nature where hikers explored and nature thrived, but now it has since dried up into a barren wasteland ruined by these bunkers. The United States Air Force originally used these areas as a testing range, but the project was abandoned, leaving most of these bunkers completely unusable, except for one. That one active bunker is now the home to the Brotherhood of Steel. Back in 2260, Elder Elijah founded the Mojave chapter here, establishing this as their second headquarters in the region, with the first being Helios 1. But after the massacre at Helios, the new elder, Nolan McNamara, took over and immediately ordered a complete lockdown of the facility. Nobody goes in and nobody goes out, unless directly authorized. But years of isolation has now taken its toll. I mean, how do you train soldiers without real combat experience? Like, sure, they've got firing ranges and some virtual reality simulations, but nothing really truly replaces a real-life battlefield. Now for the Fallout veterans, you may notice that the bunker is a little bit familiar. Well, that's because it closely resembles Raven Rock from Fallout 3. I'm sure this was used to recycle already made assets with such a limited time that they had to develop the game, but it could be made into some nice piece of lore as this is an official military base. There are 4 bunkers scattered around Hidden Valley. The others, well, they're all completely collapsed, with only their entrances intact. If you try speaking through any of the intercoms, including the Brotherhood of Steel bunkers, you'll be left with only static. So it's just best just to leave them alone for now. So let's move back to Helios 1 and back on the road to find a simple gas station service. This is just a simple stop for travelers, as there's just a few beds and a campfire. You may find a few prospectors in the area too, obviously just vibing, and like many non-important locations, you will find a Sunset Sarsaparilla star, so make sure to pick that up. Right next to it is a large desert area with nothing but ants. Fire ants to be exact. That's really about it. The only cool detail here is this military convoy nearby. And why is this important? Well, apparently you can set off a chain reaction of explosions, and it's apparently the most in the game. So I'm just going to test that out real quick. Holy crap! There are 3 locations very close to Dry Lake, and that is the El Dorado substation, which we'll explore a lot later, Black Rock Cave, where inside you can find a couple of Night King just chilling. You might as well just ruin their day while you're here. And also pick up that unique power fist called the Paladin Toaster, which is a great weapon against robots. And then lastly, we have Vault 11. Now, I won't go into super detail about what exactly happened in these vaults, as there are a couple of videos already out there who explain this beautifully, so I'll let them have that one. But I'll happily summarize what's going on here. As many of you may know, most of the vaults were built as social experiments, and Vault 11 was designed to test how far people could be pushed to obey authority. Residents were told every year that they had to sacrifice one of their own, with the first victim being the Overseer. This was all agreed as the dwellers felt betrayed by them. And from there, it became a dark tradition. Each year, a new overseer would be voted in, only to be executed immediately afterwards. But over time, tensions split the vault into different factions. The situation got so bad that the population dwindled until there was only 5 dwellers remaining. These last survivors refused to sacrifice anyone, and to their surprise, nothing happened, except a holotape was given to them congratulating them for not killing anyone. The vault door opened and they were granted their freedom. Tragically, 4 of the 5 took their own lives, leaving only a single survivor to tell the tale of this vault's dark history. Vault 11 is split in between 3 key areas. You've got the living quarters, the lower levels, and the sacrificial chamber. Just be careful while you're down there.
Greetings, martyr, and welcome. If you're here now, it means you've been offered up as a sacrifice so that your vault can continue to thrive.
Also, fun fact, the sole survivor of Vault 11 actually exists in the game files, but they're just not placed anywhere in the game itself. And here's another fun fact for you. If you go south of the vaults on the edge of El Dorado Dry Lake, you can find like this billboard, right? And it has the number 11 on it. If you position it correctly, the tear will line up with the entrance of Vault 11. I have no idea why this is a trivia or a note in the wiki, but it sounds cool, right? Just up the road from the billboard, you'll find an important trading spot, the 188 Trading Post. This was originally set up by 2 traders who fled Prim after the convicts took over. While traveling, they came across the interstate junction where they noticed a lot of trade traffic. So they just set up shop here, offering food, water, and supplies to travelers. The name 188 actually comes from adding together the interstates, which is 95 and 93. It's simple, yet clever. Over time, the trading post grew into something more than just a place for food and drink. It actually became a home for armed merchants a few settlers, and even the NCR's presence, because of course they would get involved. You can also meet Veronica here, which is a pretty cool companion to have, and she's also a member of the Brotherhood of Steel. She also is trained fighting with a power fist, which makes her pretty decent in combat, and a very helpful pack mule in my experience. You'll also encounter the Forecaster, a mysterious figure who claims to predict the future, apparently. And off in the distance, you can finally see New Vegas in all its glory. But first, we need to go check out Boulder City. While you're there, make sure to shoot the memorial to annoy that NCR soldier. It's just Fallout tradition. It's almost mandatory at this point.
What the fuck?
Now, Boulder City used to be an easy living town until the first Battle of Hoover Dam started. The NCR then turned the town into one huge trap for the Legion, as they advanced quite a lot in the Mojave. And this trap did work, and the Legion were pushed all the way back to the Colorado River. But the cost of lives was pretty insane on both sides. Actually, thinking back, shooting the memorial is pretty messed up. Like, I'm hoping we're all doing it just to wind the guy up and not because we hate the NCR, right? All that's really left standing here at Boulder City is a train station and the Bighorn Saloon. The NCR did have plans to rebuild the place, but you know, with the limestone situation at Quarry Junction, kind of stopped the whole plan altogether. It seems that the Great Khans are making a stand in town where they are holding some NCR hostages, and it is up to you to sort them all out. These are the same guys who helped put that nice bullet hole in your head. So with a little bit of force, you can demand where Benny went, and spoiler alert, he's back at the Strip in Vegas. So after that, it is up to you how you want to deal with the Khans. Me personally, I like to keep it old school. Now while you're here, you might as well pop by the Boulder City beach just up north. You can capture some nice nature shots, but unfortunately there's not much to do or to loot. It's not a really interesting area unless you like an abundance of tin cans. I'm not really sure why anyone would care about that. Just next door of this place is where all the Alphas live. This is Ranger Station Alpha, and it's just another NCR comms place. You'll find a small camp with 3 tents. It's not exactly a big area, but it serves a purpose, especially for being so close to Hoover Dam, which is where the Legion will eventually strike again. Next door to the station is another irrelevant location containing a whole lot of cars and a campground with camp stuff. You will of course in these places find more star caps, and maybe one mildly interesting fact is that in the cut content the designers actually wanted to add a bunch of cazadors that would eventually kind of take over the place. They were sort of designing this like migrating system, but unfortunately due to performance issues on the PS3 and Xbox that just couldn't happen. We are sidetracking a little bit, so let's go back on the main road to Vegas, and this is where you'll bump into the deserted shack. Yes, this is a location, guys. There's nothing even here, except for this guy. Screw this guy. In the distance, you may notice this watchtower sticking up, and this is the Followers Outpost. It's run by the Followers of the Apocalypse, a humanitarian faction dedicated to helping Wastelanders with education and medical care, and advancing these fields for the good of humanity. The outpost itself isn't big, it does what it needs to do, and it serves as a base for their field operations. If you decide to help Veronica's personal quest, you can actually convince her to leave the Brotherhood of Steel and join the Followers of the Apocalypse. But this would not be a great idea, because once you do that, the Brotherhood of Steel will slaughter everyone in here. They don't want anyone to know about their existence. Instead of continuing forward into the city, let's detour a little bit as there's a pretty big location nearby. This is Lake Las Vegas and Camp Golf, which almost blend together since they share a farm just outside of this massive house resort. You can somewhat see an abandoned golf course with yard chairs and a golf caddy scattered about, though I didn't find any 9-irons around. Interestingly though, the course was actually owned by Mr. House. After the bombs fell, the NCR moved in and used this area as a defensive outpost against the Legion. But nowadays, most NCR troops are now stationed at Hoover Dam, so Camp Golf isn't as strategically important as it once was. In fact, underperforming soldiers come here instead because either it's not a critical location anymore, or that they expect them to die in the next battle, either or. You'll also notice this large pipe that providing water, which helps with their supply of food around Vegas. Inside, the camp has been converted into a barracks, with beds for the troopers and rangers that live there. You can find a couple of propaganda posters around, and a really special piece of art of Mr. House next to Liberty Prime.
Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter.
Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter. Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter.
Speaking of Mr. House, you can also find a Lucky 38 keycard, which actually became a cut content quest, which is a shame really because there's actually a few of these keycards scattered around Vegas. I think that's about it for Camp Golf, so let's head back onto the main road and towards the center of Vegas. Along your travels, you may notice a couple of robots guarding an entrance to a building. This is the RepCon headquarters. We've already seen the RepCon test site, and now we're at RepCon headquarters. After Robco bought the company, they significantly upgraded security, which is why the area is crawling with robots. Now the reason for this boosted security is because of the technology they were building here, mainly the plasma rifle as I mentioned before. Unfortunately, there was a mole inside sneaking information out of the company to their competitor, Poseidon Energy. I did also forget to mention that Poseidon Energy actually tried to buy out RepCon, but Robco got there first, so they're a little bit salty on that. But it turns out that RepCon and Poseidon Energy were both stealing information from each other to make this first prototype plasma weapon. But you will eventually discover that the mole was named Julia Masters, the CFO for RepCon, and she is shown in the Fallout TV show. She planned on taking the weapon to the Ministry of Defense, but of course the plan failed when the bombs dropped. And so this is where you can go find it yourself behind a locked door. So make sure to take it for yourself, along with a bunch of other good loot around the area, and even 200 pre-war money. Ooh. There are 2 dead Brotherhood of Steel soldiers here, probably on a mission to recover some RepCon technology, but of course they never made it back. It looks like the roof landed on them. Poor guys. Anyway, let's continue north towards some convenient pit stop. You'll find a spot called the Grub and Gulp pit stop next to the main road, where just like 188's trading post, they saw a lot of traffic from traders and Wastelanders. So Fix and Loop set up shop and started offering food and drink to hungry travelers. Interestingly though, if you have a low karma with the NCR, these two will be hostile to you. So they're probably just some NCR supporters or something. Close by is the Aerotech office park. When the NCR came to Vegas, they converted all these abandoned office buildings into a place for refugees or people who messed up their lives while in the strip. With their hopelessness, many turn to chems as a way to pass the time. The NCR tries to keep the place going, but with limited resources, it can be quite difficult. Though it does look like the place is completely walled off, keeping raiders away, which is a pretty good thing. And there are 2 accessible buildings called Suite 200 and Suite 300. You'll mainly find a bunch of chems and some skill magazines here. If we keep moving north closer to the strip of New Vegas, you will find the East Pump Station. This is one of the few locations in New Vegas which actually shares the critical infrastructure of food and water that the NCR uses, as this is an intact pump station. There are a couple of bits of loot worth picking up if you're a bit of a hoarder.
Makes you wish for a nuclear winter.
And one of my favourite parts of this location is the Dead Money DLC references everywhere. Not sure why they chose this location, but it's still cool nonetheless. Next up, just a short way down the road, you'll come across a looted caravan and a bunch of dust piles scattered everywhere. This caravan belonged to Durable Dunn, and it looks like the caravan was hit by some well-armed bandits. It also looks like they took a few of them down as well. I guess that's why they called him Durable. There are a few other locations connected to these caravan attacks, including the Griffin Ware's caravan north of Vegas and Cassidy's caravan, who you personally met in the Mojave outpost. They've all been targeted by the same group. Personally, this site is great for picking up some cool black combat armor, so it's worth looting them even if it's just for the caps. Before we head into the strip, there are a few nearby locations to explore, so if we just head slightly down the main road, we can find Vault 34. This vault's social experiment was simple: overstock the armory with firearms and ammunition and just see what happens. They also include a nice recreational area, perhaps maybe to distract the residents from killing each other, but this was at cost of a proper living quarters. Eventually there was an overpopulation problem, sparking a riot. Half of the residents managed to escape, while the other half broke into the armory. The ones who left would later become the Boomers, who you will find later at Nellis Air Force Base. But the other half decided to stay behind and shut the door. But this wouldn't last long, as they discovered that the riot did cause a bit of damage, and a little bit of a radiation leak. So here are the locals, just chilling, you know. And even now, the radiation continues to seep into the surrounding soil, which poses a problem for the NCR, especially as their crops are nearby. And so one of the missions is to actually shut down the leaking pipes in Vault 34. Apart from that, it's a pretty standard vault, but the armory is the star prize.
I worry too much.
You will find the best gear in the game, including the All-American, a pulse gun, riot shotguns, saving you a lot of money if you loot it all. Right next to Vault 34 is a cave that is home to a man, an old man named Cannibal Johnson. Now don't let the name fool you, he's actually quite a nice guy. He goes on to explain that he got into an altercation with some raiders, so he just pulled out a hearth and just ate it in front of them, which scared them off. That is kind of metal. He used to be part of the Enclave, and that's why you can find an Enclave locker to the side here. But apart from that, it's a standard cave. Okay, that's enough exploring for now. Let's go and find Benny. Just outside of the entrance of New Vegas, you'll find the Gun Runners. They are a weapons dealer and manufacturer of some of the best weapons and armor in the game. Just don't bother trying to loot them or destroy the robot at the kiosk because it's just impossible. The glass is bulletproof. A relatively small space with guards outside and the gunsmiths working inside. It is a hostile location if you try and break in, so unless you're on a specific mission, it's just best to stay out. Fun fact though, all the gunsmiths are modelled after the Mythbusters presenters, which is a pretty neat little Easter egg. Just before entering Freeside, off to the side, you'll find the Crimson Caravan Company, one of the older trading companies in the Mojave. They expanded around the same time the NCR arrived. Having originally started in the hub from Fallout 1, they used the NCR support to establish trade routes to help grow their local economy. However, due to the NCR's negligence and lust for expansionism, they bankrupted their own economy, with the help of the Brotherhood of Steel destroying their gold reserves, which was tied to the NCR currency. This is when the Crimson Caravan stepped in, reintroducing bottle caps as currency. This explains why 100 NCR dollars in New Vegas is only worth 40 caps. Out of frustration with the NCR's near economic collapse, traders just returned to bottle caps, and the Crimson Caravan endorsed this move. Today, the company has expanded across the Mojave, investing in more traders and wealthy investors. Under the operations leader Alice McLafferty, they also reintroduced contract work, offering wages in form of food, water, and shelter. The Crimson Caravan continues to do business with the Gun Runners, Cassidy Caravans, or well, what's left of it, and the Van Graffs in Freeside, who, shock horror, tend to pay more to undercut or eliminate competitors. You know, wink wink. You can also come here to take on jobs for Alice to earn some caps, which can be useful if you're planning to spend some time in Freeside. Right next door to the Crimson Caravan is the New Vegas Medical Clinic. Owned by the followers of the Apocalypse, they offer treatment for any and all Wastelanders at a low cost to keep it affordable. They rely on charity to keep this economy going, which I don't really see working in an apocalypse, but hey, it's here and running. But what isn't cheap is their implant surgeries, which can be offered to the courier. What they will do is boost one of your special stats, or give you damage resistance, or even health regen. You may also see a giant X in front of the clinic, which is a code for the homeless that any healthcare will be free for them, keeping up with their humanitarian side of the organization. Right next to the clinic is the small ranch with mole rats. You might find a Brahmin who's hostile to you, so you might want to remove that. But once safe, you can explore the place finding a ruined building. Just be careful of the traps. Inside you can find a sniper rifle and a couple of magazines. Alright, let's go to Freeside. Now Freeside is split into two parts, with also two entrances. We have Freeside North and Freeside East. You'll see that it's a pretty populated place, with quite a few characters and factions around, all trying to carve out their little piece of heaven in Vegas. First up, we've got the Followers of the Apocalypse HQ, led by Julie Farkas. She'll offer you a few jobs if you want to lend a hand, and you can even donate some medical supplies for some karma and a bump to your reputation. These are one of the few groups that are genuinely trying to help these people. Then you've got the Kings. It's pretty hard to miss them. They all sound and dress like Elvis, but at their core they are a gang, but just not a cruel gang. They tend to actually protect the locals from raiders and hostile chem addicts, though they do seem to control the water pump, so they're not exactly that nice. Their origins trace back to the old school of impersonation, where their leader became obsessed by the king himself and decided to model his entire tribe after him. Now the NCR see them as a threat and will soon want to get rid of them, even though the Kings do help out a lot in their community. So this kind of blurs the lines on whether you think the NCR are good for humanity or not. Along the way you'll come across Mick and Ralph's, or as the kid says,
if it can be bought, it can be found at Mick and Ralph's. What's your problem?
There's also the Atomic Wrangler Casino, where you can get your first real taste of gambling. Ah, fuck. And then there's the Van Graffs. You'll know them by their black combat armor. I'm sure we've seen that somewhere else. And their obsession with energy weapons. Now they're not the friendliest bunch, because your introduction to them is seeing them execute somebody.
Never break faith with the Van Graffs, Mr. Soren.
But this place is pretty good if you are running an energy build. They've got enough energy weapons to make a Brotherhood of Steel Paladin blush. At the end of Freeside, you'll find some Securitrons guarding the gate to the strip itself, but you're not getting in without the right pass. You either need a passport, 2,000 caps, or in my case, just get the Robotics Expert perk. Just don't try pulling a stunt like this guy did. But we're not going to choose any of these locations. Instead, we're going to circle around the outskirts and head towards one of the NCR's most important resources, the sharecroppers' farms. The agricultural backbone keeping the Mojave alive. If you're ever wondering how they're getting all their food, well, this is the main NCR farm. But this isn't just for soldiers. This is also for the citizens under the protection of the NCR. Under the Thaler Act, civilian farmers from all over can receive protection, housing, clean water, and food in exchange for tending their fields and crops for the NCR, which doesn't sound like a bad idea. You may notice a big old pipe network as well along the farm, and this keeps the farm thriving, getting all their water from Lake Mead. This explains why you might see patrols near the water stations as well, though recently they were having problems with the water being infected with radiation caused by Vault 34, so as long as you solve that problem, they will be very happy with you. So let's continue onwards so we can get into Vegas for free, and that is to the NCR's HQ. This is the main operating base for the NCR in the Mojave. It's so big that they had to use an entire airport just to move all their soldiers in. Honestly, it's quite impressive that Obsidian managed to get this place running okay on the old consoles, because I don't know about you guys, when I had this game on the PS3, it would take like 5 minutes to load up sometimes. Before the NCR arrived, the airport was actually abandoned for decades. But it seems like the walls held up surprisingly well even after the war, and once a treaty between Mr. House and the NCR was signed so that they coexist with each other, the Republic moved into this old site and turned it into their stronghold. And thanks to the airport's infrastructure, they even utilized the monorail, shuttling NCR personnel directly in and out of the strip. Now of course, being an airport, the layout is massive. Outside you've got a training camp, you've got watch posts, and some tents where the soldiers train and live. Step inside and you'll find laboratories, interrogation rooms, trading posts, a place to eat. It's got it all. Camp McCarran is easily one of the most quest-heavy locations in the entire game, with over 16 missions tied to it. That means as the courier, your choices here have a massive impact on how the Mojave actually plays out. But for now, we're not going to stick around as we've got our sights set on the Strip, and the fastest way in is just a simple disguise, baby. A quick stroll past the guards and onto the monorail, and now we're on a free ride straight to New Vegas. Welcome to the heart and soul of New Vegas, untouched by nuclear fire thanks by none other Mr. House and his defense systems. So who is Mr. House exactly? Well, he's a billionaire industrialist and owner of Robco Industries. Mr. House foresaw the incoming attacks and prepared accordingly. FYI, the canon might change due to the new season of the new TV series, so this lore might be a little bit different. On top of the Lucky 38 sits a line of defense, powerful laser arrays designed to intercept incoming warheads. But as we know, not every missile was stopped, but it seems like the central area of the Strip did survive. But Mr. House's story didn't end there. There was actually a flaw with the Mark I operating system that ran through both the missile defense system and his Securitrons, and it seemed to have put him in a coma. And so for 2 long centuries, Vegas was left to ruin, eventually being overrun by tribals and raiders. That's when he finally awoke, and he had one clear mission: to recover the platinum chip, to upgrade his army to a Mark II model, and secure his rule. But first, he needed order. He struck deals with the local tribes, elevating them into the 3 families that we have here: the Emeritus of Gomorrah, White Glove Society at the Ultralux, and the Chairman at the Tops, restoring Vegas to a shadow of its former glory. Next was Vault 21. And of course, House owns this vault because he actually won it in a game of blackjack before the war. And when he saw the residents actually, living in it, he wanted to concrete the place and push all the dwellers out. But there was one dweller named Sarah who pleaded with House with the idea of turning it into a motel. And as Mr. House is a seasoned businessman, he saw the opportunity of this and agreed with her offer and turned the vault into this sort of residence/hotel for anybody willing to pay the caps to stay. Then came the NCR. They obviously wanted Vegas, of course, but Mr. House's Securitrons made it way too difficult for them to use their typical tactic of force. So instead, the New Vegas Treaty was created, an agreement that allowed the NCR soldiers to go through the Strip and spend their well-earned caps into gambling and degeneracy. See, Mr. House always wins. Eventually, after the first battle of Hoover Dam, House would then allow the NCR to form some military police and a nice little embassy for them at the end of the Strip. With the setting in place, it's time to find Benny and to finally end it all. But Victor will try and stop you and convince you to go visit House first. But you can just ignore him and just head straight to the Tops to confront Benny. And there he is, Mr. Fancy Pants. It's a shame they take your weapons away on entry. Now there's actually multiple ways of dealing with Benny, but for the purpose of the video, we're going to do the most basic one, where we're just going to nod our head and agree to meet him at his suite, which of course will not end well for us.
It would be 41 flavors of stupid to let you get a drop on me. Good night, all.
In his room, you'll find a Securitron that's a little bit different to the other ones, and his name is Yes Man. Apparently Benny wanted to use this guy to take over all of Vegas for himself with the platinum chip. As you leave, Vulpus Inculta will show up once again, but this time in a sharp new suit. He lets you know that Benny has fled to the Legion's main camp, and before he leaves, he lets you know that any past sins against the Legion are now forgiven, giving you a clean slate if you would like to swap allegiances. It seems that House also wants you to head towards the Legion camp as well to recover the platinum chip so he can upgrade his Securitrons. So let's do that. We will take a little bit of a quick detour to some locations we skipped earlier in the southeast corner of the map. For example, the Cazador's Nest. Now, I know what you're thinking, don't go near Cazador's. Well, yes. However, if you're feeling lucky and you've got the right tools, you should be able to get through this just fine. There is some loot that you can find here, some ammo, and an adventurer's duffel bag, but yeah, overall, this location kinda sucks. If we go up a couple of hills to the east, you'll find another ranger station. This is Ranger Station Delta. Built on a used farmstead, this ranger station is used to monitor any Legion doing any sort of infiltration in the area. And considering how close they are to the Legion HQ, it makes total sense adding a station here. But apart from that, there isn't really anything else here. So let's head on upwards to Camp Forlorn Hope. And unlike the smaller checkpoints scattered around the Mojave, this is a full-scale military camp. But despite its size, it's kinda in rough shape. Forlorn Hope is plagued with low morale, short supplies, and a sense of abandonment. Word has spread that Nelson has fallen into Legion hands and supply lines are being restricted. Not only that, but Camp Searchlight has been completely destroyed and Legion patrols stopping all traders and reinforcements to the area. And the result? An NCR camp left to rot, bogged down by bureaucracy and poor management while their soldiers struggle to hold the line.
If you're looking for supplies, I'll make this easy for you. There aren't any.
As the courier, you can step in here if you want, taking on missions to bring in much needed resources to rally up those troops and give Forlorn Hope a fighting chance. If you do decide to walk away, then history will take its course, knowing that the camp is doomed to be overrun in the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. Between Forlorn Hope and Nelson, the Legion turned the area into a deadly minefield, littered with NCR corpses, who had to learn the hard way. Leaving the area and heading back onto the main roads, you may spot a bunch of windmills. There are some cazadors roaming around the area, so just be careful of that. But ultimately, this is just a maintenance shack. It is good for a bit of loot, but that's really about it. If we head back onto the road to Nelson, we will find a cave. And this place is swarmed with Legionnaires. They are currently using this location to lock up a couple of the NCR soldiers. And again, it is up to you if you want to save them or not. There are some couple of bits of good loot scattered around which can be looted without causing any trouble. So if you want to be neutral, you can do that. Just a little bit down south is another cave, the Lucky Jim Cave. Though you might be disappointed that Lucky Jim's cave has collapsed and only the house is accessible. It's a nice nifty place to rest up for the day, I guess. Just a tiny bit further down south is another ranger station. This is the closest ranger station to Cottonwood Cove, which is Legion territory. So the rangers use this location to kind of spy on their movement and see what they're doing. You may notice as well that all the NCR rangers here are ghouls, except for one of them. So either they got really lucky choosing their placement of ghoul rangers, as it's so close to Camp Searchlight, as it's been hit with a lot of radiation there, or they are just simply rangers that got a bit too close to Camp Searchlight. You can find a bit of loot around the area if you don't mind stealing from the NCR. It might be worth it. Just to the east of here is Prospector's Camp. I am not sure why this is a location in the game. Maybe another cut content piece, but for what I do know, that this is a location where you would want to go to pick up one of the best power armors in the game in an unmarked location if you continue going east. There is just a lot of deathclaws though, so maybe not a good idea. If we go back to the ranger station and go west this time, we can bump into the Coyote Mines, and I'll let you guess what's in there. If you said coyotes, you would be wrong because there's actually nothing here. It seems to be split into two parts, one being the mine itself being homed by a couple of prospectors and a lot of dynamite. And the other is the mine's home, which has some loot worth grabbing inside. Right next door you can find the Searchlight North Gold Mine. Unfortunately, you will not find any gold here, but you will find ghouls. Quite a few of them, in fact. It is pretty decent for some XP, so it might be worth clearing this place out. The East Gold Mine isn't that different, but it is way bigger, and it's also home to a couple of Vipers. If you take the first squad out, a bunch more will spawn in the entrance that you came from, which is actually quite unique in the game. Alright, so let's talk about Camp Searchlight and why this place is such an important and tragic location. When the NCR began pushing deeper into the Mojave, they set up Camp Searchlight as one of their main bases of operations, a hub for logistics and also for troop movements in the region. But things went catastrophically wrong thanks to none other than Volpez and Coulter. The sneaky dog that he is and his squad of Frumentari managed to sabotage the area by uncovering and releasing pre-war nuclear waste. Because, you know, cutting off NCR trade just wasn't enough, Vulpes wanted to scorch the earth itself to cripple the NCR. His men did die in the process, but for the Legion, it was considered a worthy sacrifice. The result was devastating, radiation spreading across the whole town, transforming NCR soldiers into ghouls, and of course going feral, and they now roam the ruins. And this is what remains of Camp Searchlight. You will find a few structures still standing, a fire station where the waste was actually stored, the old police station, and the church. It is of course a dangerous place filled with feral ghouls, rad scorpions, and golden geckos, but it is also one of the most rewarding areas to explore if you are prepared. If you do have the Wild Wasteland perk, you'll come across one of the best Easter eggs in the game. A stash of holy hand grenades, an Easter egg from the Monty Python film. And by the way, they're ridiculously OP. Further south of the town is an airport, which I think is rather disappointing, considering there's not much going on here, except for some rad scorpions and an inaccessible building. Though there are 2 trunks that could potentially give you up to 1,000 caps, depending on your luck. Now that we've finished the area, let's make our way down to Cottonwood Cove. So while the NCR were busy watching their soldiers rot away from the radiation at Camp Searchlight, the Legion seized their opportunity to move in and occupy this stretch of land. By doing so, they established a direct route into the Mojave that bypasses the Hoover Dam entirely, which I think is a pretty clever strategy. The man in charge here is Centurion Aurelius of Phoenix, who oversees slave transfers across the river to Caesar's main camp, and of course planning raids and operations against the NCR. Pre-war, this actually used to be a resort, which explains the cabins, the boats, and the docks still scattered around. But now it's been transformed into one of the Legion's most fortified outposts in the Mojave. It is also a key departure point if you want to cross to the Legion stronghold. And if you'd like a little bit of poetic justice, you do have the opportunity to return the favor for what they did at Camp Searchlight. Just up the hill above Cottonwood, you'll find barrels of radiation waste, just ready to radiate the entire area below. The choice is yours, of course. You can wipe them out, or you can just leave the camp standing. Next to the cove is Cottonwood Overlook. This is where you can find these radiation barrels, but apart from that, it's a pretty dead area.
I warned them about that truck weeks ago. Always be prepared for any hazardous radiation, I said.
Just further down, you'll find the Prospectors camp, which looks pretty bunkered down, mainly because of the lake lurks in the area. You may find a dog living here, but no prospector, assuming they're probably dead due to the hostile area. As always, you can find a star cap here as we continue to collect those. Near the furthest reaches of the map, you will find a cave, which is homed to a bunch of fire geckos. And with further inspection, you can find the legendary one here, making this a pretty dangerous location. And according to the game guide, this is the birthplace of these creatures. Hey, the more you know. Here's another fun fact for you. You can actually find an evil gnome here, which is unique to all the other gnomes in the game, as it's built on the design of the lead world builder, Scott Everts. The last location in this area is Cottonwood Crater, which is accessible through the Fire Root Cavern. So why is it a crater? Well, this looks like another bomb location where Mr. House just couldn't hit. Thus, the radiation problem here. And indeed, the area is pretty spicy here. You will find a couple of golden geckos and a dead prospector who seem to have a fat man on him, which is a pretty decent reward. Now, I did accidentally miss 2 more locations in the southeast, which is the Blue Paradise Rentals, which is home to a bunch of lake lurks. Bro, this is just the Mylurk Kings. Why did they have to rename them? You will find a couple of cabins that have sunk slightly into the lake and a couple of boats underwater. You can actually access these cabins where you can find a couple of star caps inside. The last location in this area is the Sniper's Nest, located west of Cottonwood Cove. While there is nothing too exciting going on here, it does have a nice gun case in which you will need 100 in lockpick. Inside is a unique sniper rifle, which actually looks really cool. This is clearly designed to help snipe the Legion from here, but due to the draw distance, it can be quite difficult. This place probably has some ties to the NCR, as you can find a note about a sniper in Camp McCarran. So with all that said and done, let's finally go to the fort.
Awe, Are you ready to head upriver?
This is the main stronghold of Caesar's Legion, where the big cheese himself, Caesar, is protected by his Praetorian Guard and orchestrates plans for the second attack on Hoover Dam. The fort is built around a weather monitoring station, which is just a clever ruse since the site secretly houses a massive bunker of Securitrons created by Robco Industries for Mr. House. Which I think is quite ironic considering Caesar's building an army on top of a robotic army. The area is steeped in Roman symbolism. The Legion banners, a gladiator arena, and slaves working under harsh conditions. All elements of Caesar's vision brought to life. When you actually speak with him, you'll see that Benny has been captured. But first, Caesar orders you to use the platinum chip to destroy whatever is hidden down in the bunker, not knowing he's basically asking to cripple Mr. House's robot army. Of course, we will only follow Mr. House's instructions instead, because as you know, House always wins.
Good.
Once we bypass the security, and once you return to Caesar, he'll ask what you want to do to Benny, and that decision is entirely up to you. Me personally, I like a good crucifixion.
Don't do that, baby. Not crucifixion.
With revenge settled, the next step is to choose your allegiance. The Legion, the NCR, Mr. House, or just do your own thing with Yes Man. Regardless of what choice you want to do, you will have to make contact with the other sub-factions. These are the Boomers, the Brotherhood of Steel, the Three Family Tribes, and the Great Khans, many of which we haven't even visited yet. So let's start with the Boomers at Nellis Air Force Base, located northeast of the map. Approaching the base on the main road, you'll see a shack to the side. This is Field's shack, but there's really nothing interesting here. It's just a shack that someone probably lived in. You will find a unique BB gun here, depending if you have the World Wasteland perk, and if you do, you'll have to find Jimmy's well. But just up the road, you'll be stopped by a man warning you not to enter, claiming you'll be blown to bits if you continue. Of course, you can just bet that you'll be fine and keep going. Maybe I should have listened to him. I have a personal strategy for this, which is hug the rocks nearby, and it seems to work 9 out of 10 times. Eventually you'll reach the gates, where it is too close for any bombardment to hit you. Once inside, you'll be brought in for questioning, and this is where you can pick up a variety of quests to help the Boomers, if you wish. The base itself is massive, so much so that it's split into 3 main areas. We have the airfield, the hangars, and the radar arrays. This was originally used as a US military base, but unfortunately the bombs did fall around here during the Great War. Some pilots did try to escape, but unfortunately none of them would succeed. And for centuries, the site would remain abandoned due to high radiation. That's until the survivors of Vault 34 would discover it, and by that point the radiation had died down a bit and the settlers would eventually set up shop and establish themselves as the Boomers, a fiercely isolationist faction that relies on their own crops, water pumped from Lake Mead, and solar energy to power generators, and of course shoot a couple of howitzer shells at anyone that comes nearby. But despite their isolationism, the Boomers have ambitions. Following their expertise with explosives, they dream of taking to the skies, perhaps in a B-29 bomber, which is one of their quests if you wish to help them out. Inside the base you'll find hangars where they hang out. I'm sorry. A school for children, barracks, a medical station, a power plant, and a large storage area in the generator room. Here is where you can find Thump Thump and their solar arrays, where you can fix them using the broken parts from Helios 1. If you want to track down their bomber, you'll head slightly southeast along the road to Lake Mead, passing numerous other locations along the way. The first one being Raoul's shack, which is homed to a man called Raoul. Unfortunately, he's not home at the moment as he's been kidnapped in Black Mountain, which we should probably go there soon. Inside you'll find a bunch of junk and a workbench, and considering he's a mechanic, this all totally makes sense. Just down the road from here you'll find another shack, but this one is a little bit more special, as it's a personal safe house for the Brotherhood of Steel, and can only be accessible after you complete the Brotherhood of Steel missions, with a light reputation. This is probably my favorite safe house, considering the fact you can get a Tesla cannon, power armor, and all the big guns you'll ever need, and a water fountain, which actually is pretty useful in hardcore mode. You also get a paladin walking into your home just to fix up some repairs and give you some free stuff. Just up the hill from the safe house is Bloodborne Cave. These are home to the Night Stalkers, and has always been their home since we can find their legendary Night Stalker here. At the back of the cave we can find a gate with some pretty decent loot behind it. This location is pretty good for more obscure weapons like the 12.7mm submachine gun and a hunting shotgun. If you can deal with the Night Stalkers, it might be worth checking out earlier so that you don't have to buy the guns from the gun runners. If we come back down to the main road, we'll mark a location called the Coyote Tail Ridge, which shares an entrance to Bitter Springs. While there is no loot around, or anything for that matter, the location lore-wise is important, and that's because of what happened here in Bitter Springs. Bitter Springs was once a thriving settlement for the Great Khans, but everything went sideways once the NCR arrived. The Khans thought it would be fun to cause some trouble and harass the NCR traders in the region, which eventually led to 4 NCR troopers being killed. And let's just say the NCR were not very happy about this. So in response, the first NCR recon team was sent in to put an end to the violence. Not everyone in Bitter Springs was a fighter. Many were children, elderly, and civilians lived in this settlement, and due to the lack of communication, the NCR turned into Anakin. The NCR turned into Anakin when he found out his mother died.
And not just the men, but the women and the children too.
Now, while doing research for this location, I didn't actually know I was going to stumble onto such a hot topic, because some people online are saying that the NCR were in the right to be doing this, and some others are saying the Khans were not to blame. Now, in my opinion, I think both were wrong. The Khans have been a problem for the NCR since literally the start of the NCR, from kidnapping their first president all the way in Fallout 1. They also pride themselves in murdering and pillaging, so getting rid of them feels justifiable in some ways. But to murder innocents, well, I'll leave that with you. The surviving Khans fled to the west into the canyons, leaving Bitter Springs scarred and empty. And so today, all that remains is an NCR base housing displaced refugees from other locations. A quiet reminder of the loss of life that happened here. Close by is another ranger station where this overlooks Lake Mead for any oncoming Legion. They are one of the first contacts if there was an attack from the Legion, and if you go further on, and if you have the Wild Wasteland perk, you will find one of the unexploded bombs, which is called The One, which can be salvaged for parts. Very close by is a crater called the Devil's Throat, which contains a lot of radiation barrels and centaurs. And just inside one of the trucks, you'll find a very unlucky prospector who seemed to have OD'd himself. He seems to be carrying a unique minigun and a party hat just in case you wanted that. Now that we're at the edge of the map, let's move back a bit to Bitter Springs again and to the recreational area. If you like junk, this is the place, because there's a whole lot of nothing at this location. You will find 2 star caps though, which I guess is cool. Closer to the coast, you'll find Colville Bay. This place has a bit of a cazador problem. It used to be a boat rental company back in the pre-war era, but now it's just a nice lovely nest for cazadors. Following the road from Bitter Springs, you'll come across the 2 final locations in the area, Camp Guardian and Guardian Peak. Originally intended to be an NCR outpost, the plan fell very quickly when the local wildlife didn't like the idea of humans being around them. A squad sent to establish the base never made it, falling victim to the dangerous creatures inhabiting the area. In particular, a group of lake lurks lurking in the nearby caves, which seems to have wiped out all of the team. When you arrive, you can explore the remnants of the failed mission via diary logs left behind by the soldiers. It also seems there was a distress signal sent, which tragically never reached Ranger Station Bravo.
Oh, thank God. I didn't think I'd ever see another human face down here. Ah!
If you clear out the lake lurks in the cave, you can bring justice to those who have fallen if you want to clear out the lake lurks in the cave. This was also a cool missed detail, but in a log it explains that an NCR soldier threw a knife at a lake lurk's back. But unfortunately Obsidian missed the mark on this, where they could have maybe left a knife lodged in one of the lake lurks. That would have just been a really nice touch. Guardian Peak itself would have been a fantastic strategic position, but the NCR never really had the manpower to secure it, so now it is left abandoned. Now remember back to the boomers that wanted a plane, more specifically a bomber? Well, coincidentally, there is one that can be found in the lake. This B-29 plane has been here since 1948, so I'm actually very surprised if they can actually get anything good out of this. All you need to do is strap some balloon thingies on the fins, step back, and somehow the boomers are going to have to drag this back, and I have no idea how. But fun fact, this crash was actually a real event that happened in the real Lake Mead. So nice touch, Obsidian. Now if you are a real explorer, you'll find an underwater cave. This location seems to be designed for players who actually take the time to explore locations. What makes this exceptionally difficult is that you will need a rebreather from the boomers to actually properly explore this place, because if you don't, you'll be sipping on too much water that will make you feel a little bit unwell. Though I do need to mention that this location is pretty beautiful. You will also find a bunch of loot and a dude with a lot of pre-war money. But we're not leaving the lake just yet, because in the middle of it all is the scavengers platform, which seems to be overrun by lake lurks. It looks like the scavengers at the time didn't take into consideration the dangers of mutated wildlife. You will find a bit of loot around and another Wasteland survival guide. Back on land, you'll find one of the last locations in the area, which is a random shack with a very simple interior.
That's enough of that.
It was probably just made for a little bit of world building, so you can sleep in this location. Heading back from the roads, you'll find another shack, but this one is a little bit more interesting. If you guessed by the name, it appears that someone has been counterfeiting caps in this isolated shack. You can take them, but unfortunately you will not be able to spend them, because you are a good courier. This is also a pretty good location for stars, as there is 3 of them, so I hope you guys have been counting, because I haven't.
I knew I should have done it.
The Gypsum Train Yard. What a place. Now it is crawling with deathclaws, but most of them are either young or blind, so you should be able to handle them okay-ish. Just think of it as like a warm-up before tackling the real danger, that is Quarry Junction. Inside the main building, you'll find an ant nest, so threats are basically everywhere in this location. So all I can say is, enjoy. Of course, you can just skip the chaos entirely and instead just let the boomers know that you're helping them about their bomber. Doing so ensures that when the end game rolls around, they'll be able to back you up. Nice! Heading back to New Vegas, the boomers are now on our side, but what about the Great Khans? Well, they're located in the west, so that's our next destination. We're going to be taking the northwest route, because if we decide to go straight west, it's basically just a death sentence thanks to the fiends, which makes our first stop here at the North Vegas Square. Much like all the other settlements scattered around Vegas, North Vegas Square is the home to Wastelanders who have fallen through hard times, people who are suffering from chem addictions, those fleeing debts at casinos, and others driven into poverty. Here is where they found refuge, all under the protection of an unofficial leader called Crandon. Crandon makes it clear what he thinks of the NCR. To him, they see this community as nothing more than trouble, selfish, and greedy people not worth helping. But what if the NCR's real reason for hating this place is because of jealousy? Because while the NCR drowns in red tape and bureaucracy, North Vegas survives on its own terms, without any interference. Food for thought. The place itself has seen better days. A large portion of the community now lives in North Vegas sewers, a dark but oddly communal space where many gather. Still, there's really not much to do here. You can pick up a side quest or two if you would like to lend a hand, but ultimately this feels like one of those locations Obsidian might have fleshed out if they had more extra time. Crandon does mention about an old factory nearby where no scavenger has left alive.
Every salvager who tries gets blown up, flattened, or gutted by traps.
This is the HH Tools factory. During the pre-war era, it was previously owned by Anthony House, the half-brother of the one and only Robert House, where he inherited it from his father. And so Robert House, envious of his half-brother, went on to make Robco Industries. Look at that. The company was built on spite. And while Robert House thrived, Anthony just continued to struggle in his business. The company just couldn't compete, and over the years he grew bitter and paranoid, convinced that his half-brother was deliberately trying to ruin him. By the 2020s, Anthony's paranoia had spiraled out of control. He dismissed all his employees, locked down the factory, and filled it with lethal security measures in an attempt to protect his failing empire. Fast forward to today, and the factory still stands, still filled with all the death traps left over from the war. Locals talk about the valuable loot that can be found inside, but if anyone goes in, nobody ever comes out. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any of this valuable loot or scavengers that everyone was desperately wanting because there's not really much going on in here. But interestingly, there is some cut content, as you can find a similar keycard that can be found at Camp Gulf, which regards Mr. House's death quest. It is kind of a shame that they did cut out a lot of content from this game, and it's all because of their time constraints by the damn shareholders.
You'll bleed, bitch.
And now something completely different, and even less interesting. If we keep heading southwest towards the Great Khans, we can bump into the South Cistern. It's basically the same as all the other places, mainly used for water supply around Vegas, and of course owned by the NCR. Just east of the South Cistern, you can find a sewer and inside a massive fighting arena. This is where you, the courier, can woo a lady with an obsession with bringing eggs of wild mutated animals, from geckos to cazadors. These will then be used for the arena to keep the population going. Again, unfortunately due to cut content, it did actually involve in turning off all the power and letting all the animals run amok throughout Westside, which would have been such a cool feature. But speaking of Westside, let's have a look at that place next. So much like Freeside, Westside is split into its own little community, including an east side and a west side. And unlike most of the Mojave, this settlement isn't controlled by any major faction. It's just ordinary Wastelanders down on their luck, trying to make a life for themselves together. Westside actually started out with a handful of NCR settlers, but over time the followers of the apocalypse had more influence here. Eventually the town grew into an entirely independent community, with its own little militia to defend against the threats like fiends. Thanks to the farming and the trade, Westside has carved out its own little bit of prosperity in the shadows of New Vegas. And for the fans of the classic Fallout games, Westside has some fun callbacks. You'll meet a character referencing Klamath from Fallout 2, and a few characters with ties to New Reno, another iconic location from Fallout 2. Now, of course, this town still has its fair share of problems, like poverty, addiction, and crime. But then again, what city in Fallout doesn't? At the center of it all is Miguel's pawn shop. This is actually a location, by the way, named after the owner, Miguel, a rather young guy who unfortunately had to take over the shop after his father was killed by fiends. But it is just a standard trade shop. If you speak to Klamath Bob, he does tell us about a location just a little bit further south of Westside, which is called the Monte Carlo Suites. Now, this isn't the most pleasant place because it is homed not by the fiends, but by the Scorpions. They seem to be this like startup gang with nothing much going on. Many of them kind of lose fights a lot between Westside's militia and the fiends, so yeah, just clear them out. The base itself isn't really anything amazing, you can get some ammo here and there, and the leader Yvette has a nice 4.4 Magnum. Okay, so let's just keep heading south to a landmark that's actually really important to New Vegas. Now you may see a large bottle of Sunset Sarsaparilla, as this is their main headquarters. And amazingly, despite 2 centuries of decay, the headquarters itself is still standing strong. This was the most popular soft drink in the Mojave. Not only was this the distribution hub, but it also seems to be a bit of a tourist attraction. When you enter, you're greeted by a quirky robot named Festus, who will tell you about a special prize for anyone who collects 50 Sunset Sarsaparilla Star bottle caps. Inside, you'll find a mix of office spaces, shipping rooms, and plenty of robots patrolling the halls. And yes, all those boxes have physics. If you have been hoarding those star caps from the beginning, Festus will eventually let you into the locked star prize room. And instead of some pre-war treasure that everyone promised, the big reward is just some cheap sheriff badges. You can find this poor guy who originally discovered the prize, but unfortunately he did suffocate inside the sealed room. You can pick up his note where he regrets everything that he did to try and win this prize, of all the horrors and murder that he had to do. A grim end to what's essentially a big marketing gimmick. And from one drink place to another, let's go to the Brewer Beer Bootlegging. I'll try saying that 3 times. Here is where you can find a dead man named Gord, who made a drink called the Strategic Nuclear Moose underneath his shack, but due to a bit of a Cazador problem, it ceased to continue. Here is where you can find out his tragic story of Gord and his group, and some loot and skill books. So now we're going to be bumping into the main Fiend territory. On our way to the Great Khan camp, there is a Poseidon gas station location. It looks like it has been turned into a bit of a nuclear waste dump, but the reason this place exists is mainly due to this crazy woman, and she is one of the 3 main Fiend Raider leaders that you will need to eliminate for the NCR. So its main purpose is basically so you can keep a safe distance from her. Well, that's just my assumption anyways. If we continue our path to the Khans, you'll find a location called Chance's Map. Now this location only exists if you have read the Fallout New Vegas comic book. Yes, there was actually one during the collector's edition, and this explained the story of how Benny actually tracked you down. So while a group of Great Khans were waiting for their employer, i.e. Benny, they planned out a route, and Chance used his knife to make a little map using parts that he found and a dirt line. It's actually pretty genius, as you can see like key landmarks are represented as something. You've got like the Quarry Junction that uses the Deathclaw bone, a cherry bomb for the boomers, tin cans for settlements, and a stick of dynamite for the powder ganger locations. I think this is one of the most beautiful bits of storytelling in this game. But unfortunately Chance didn't make it, as we'll explain later on. Close by we have the Nopa Cave, which consists of just a couple of fire geckos, which by the way really hurts if you're not careful. But the main benefit of being in this cave is the super mutant, which has a fat man, which are quite rare in this game. The last location before we enter into the Great Khans is the Springmount Park. This looks like a place that's been completely destroyed and wildlife has taken over, which there's nothing wrong with that really. You can find some mantises and cazadors around, but nothing good in terms of loot. And with that being the last location in this area, let's go ahead towards the Great Khan camp. So after the whole Bitter Springs fiasco, the Great Khans retreated into the Red Rock Canyon. It feels like a natural fortress that gives them both cover and a chance to rebuild. The canyon also works as a defensive position, as it blocks off majority of the directions, and of course it allows them to push their biggest trade, chems. Interestingly, the Fiends don't really bother the Khans, but not out of fear, is because they want a steady supply of chems flowing through. So this isn't really a practical alliance, it's just built on addiction really. So where did the Khans actually pick up their chemistry skills? Well, it turns out that the followers of the Apocalypse were the ones who taught them how to make chems. Nice going, lads.
Right on.
Depending on your
Let's have
choices, you can help them even more if you have a high enough science skill.
Groo-delicious.
The camp itself is set up into tents, campfires, and even a small fighting area, much like the Legion base. And speaking of the Legion, it seems that they have made an alliance with the Khans. You can find the Legion ambassador sitting next to the leader of the Khans. And considering they both hate the NCR, this is kind of understandable. But spoiler alert, you can actually find out that the Legion will eventually use the Khans as slaves. If you want the Khans to like you, there is a few side missions where you act as their courier, distributing chem packages to the Fiends. Eventually this leads you into Vault 3, where the Fiend leader resides. So let's go and say hello to him. I'd like to welcome you to the Fiend territory. So who are the Fiends? Well, they're just raiders who are hopped up on way too many chems. But to be honest, what raider group isn't? Their origins are unknown, however they did spread quickly in New Vegas, and due to their chem-addicted nature, they are pretty insane. But they're not as stupid as you think, as they were able to get the Vault 3 residences to open up their vault for trading, where every single one of them were killed. So what was Vault 3 exactly? Well, this one is even more tragic because this did not have a social experiment inside. This was intended to keep the Vault Dwellers alive for the human population. So for the Fiends to just shoot them all is actually pretty sad. There was a water leak that did appear over the course of time which forced the residences to leave the vault for help. And it all went well until they started trading with the Fiends and, well, you know the rest. The Fiends moved in and Motor Runner, the leader of the Fiends, now resides here to protect themselves from the dangers such as the NCR and the West Side Militia. It has 3 key areas: the recreational area where the NCRs do recreational stuff, the living area where they do some living, and the maintenance room where they don't do maintenance, but Motor Runner just sits on his throne all day. Just make sure to shoot this waste of space while you're here, or don't if you want to be friendly with the Khans.
They can't keep a steady supply. We'll find someone who can.
Just outside of South Vegas, you can find the New Vegas Steel. You would imagine a bunch of Fiends being here, but surprisingly there isn't. Instead, there's just a bunch of crazed robots in here, including Mr. Steel himself. There's nothing much here apart from some loot and a computer that has cut content that links to the Lucky 38 override. Sort of what the HH Tools location had, where some more important stuff was going to happen, but of course it was cut. Just on the other side of the bridge is the NCR territory, and I kinda did forget a location which is opposite of their main base called the El Rey Motel. Interestingly, this is still used by random Wastelanders. This one's just filled with bark scorpions. This one has a rookie Michael Myers in it. Oh, and this Wastelander got wasted? I need to stop with this lame commentary. Overall, this place is just for loot and exploration. Just make sure to pick up the star cap if you haven't got them already. I don't know why you would need it, but it's there. Very close to both New Vegas Steel and the El Rey Motel is another pump station. Basically, it's the same as the east one, except this one has been taken over by the Fiends. You would think that the NCO would keep this place protected, but I guess they just don't have the time or manpower. There's nothing crazy about this location. You can find a book in there and a hacked terminal to see that the water is contaminated. So let's just keep moving south into Basin Creek Basement. Now this location is a lot more interesting. On the surface, the building itself itself doesn't look like much, and once you step inside, there's still a whole lot of nothing going on. But lore-wise, this is actually the building that Obsidian wanted to create based on their real-life offices, including some real-life events that happened there. For example, there's a car crashed into the building, and apparently based on the real Obsidian offices, a vehicle did actually plow into it. Crazy stuff. You'll also notice an ant wandering around, which is a nod to an ant infestation that they had to deal with, and supposedly a rat died in the walls, but unfortunately no rat can be found here. You missed the mark there, Obsidian. Just next door we have another building, the Allied Technology Offices, which is just infested by ants. That's about it. You can find a couple of books and nothing much in terms of lore. Well, it seems like we found our reason of why that building was filled with ants, because there is an ant mound just a little south of here in a destroyed barn. And inside you can find a fire ant queen, which is probably the only one in the game, which is pretty unique. So make sure to get her queen ant pheromone. To continue the world building, if we keep going south, we'll find a hunter's farmhouse where the powder gangers can be seen fighting some fire geckos. They probably got split from the main group when they were working at the quarry junction, or maybe the idea that one of the vaults is nearby, which some of them live in now. Inside you can find a bit of loot and a potential player home, as you can sleep in this king-size bed, and there's plenty of storage. It's just a shame really, because there's just a bunch of stuff that can kill you around here. Just back up north again, there is a rock crushing plant which has been abandoned by prospectors. There is legit nothing here. Like, I looked around and could not find a single thing. Maybe they just didn't have enough time to work on this place. Anyways, the Whittaker Homestead, where more powder gangers are also holed up here. Again, it's just another home, but this one actually has a note in it, which is not meant to be here. It's actually speaking about Boulder's city, so this is actually a bug that they never fixed. Instead, it's supposed to talk about Samuel Cook, who is the main guy that broke out of the NCR Correctional Facility, speaking about how he's sending his boys to Vault 19, which is exactly where we're going next. Now, this vault did have a social experiment where they segregated two groups into red and blue sectors. They would both have an overseer each, and both groups are limited to interactions between them. The social experiment expanded to induce paranoia in the vaults by the hands of the overseer or overseers. They may sometimes hear a high-pitched beep and a flashing light into maybe a code sequence, and both groups basically blamed each other to a point of civil unrest. And that is all that is known about this vault. By the time the powder gangers stumbled across Vault 19, it was already abandoned. They moved in, led by Samuel Cook, and now the place is more or less a hideout for escaped convicts. Exploring inside, you'll notice how the living quarters are still divided between red and blue, and if you check beneath the overseer's office, you'll find a network of sulfur caves that eventually leads back outside. Now, the surrounding area outside isn't very friendly, as there's both Deathclaws and Cazadors that roam nearby, making this one of the more dangerous areas of the Mojave. But if you survive long enough to push through, you'll find a classic little western-style town called Bonnie Springs. Now, this used to be an old mining town, but now it looks like it's seen better days. It is occupied by the Viper gang, and this is where you can find a unique Viper leader who has a unique unarmed weapon called Love and Hate. I really wish they did more to this place because I absolutely love this location. Right at the end, before we go full circle to Good Springs, is a makeshift Great Khan camp. There's really nothing much that could be said here, except it looks like that the Khans try to set up a stop here, maybe used by Benny and the Khan group as they get close to Good Springs. There's more evidence to this as we go slightly more north. You will find Chance's grave. Right next to Chance's grave is the tribal village. And remember those Cazadors from the beginning of the video? Well, this is where they're all coming from. But it seems like the people weren't killed by Cazadors. It was actually by a group of psyched up fiends. See, when Benny arrived in the area with his Khan group, they noticed the attack on the village, and it sent Chance into a state of trauma after what he witnessed at Bitter Springs. And so, with a mix of his chem withdrawals, he just charged into the fiends, and Benny and his group had to follow along to beat these fiends. Surprisingly, they actually came out winning, but Chance, the traumatized Khan, suffered heavy burns from a flamer that one of the fiends had, and soon he would pass away due to his wounds. And that is why he has his burial very close nearby. If you want to dig up his grave, he does have a unique combat knife. This will be our last stop here, as the next stop will be back at Goodsprings, so let's go back to the homestead and see how those Deathclaws are doing nearby the quarry junction. Now approaching the railway, you may notice a couple of Deathclaws, maybe even 5 of them. Yes, this location is not the best for preserving your life, especially as this abandoned railway station has literally one thing of interest, which is a star cap, which is not what we need anymore. You can find some other stuff, but it's not really worth staying here. Now, if you love the NCR, then you would definitely love their safe house, as it's very close by here. It does have one of my favorite layouts, especially for a safe house, and inside you can find all the NCR armors, including the NCR Ranger armor if you haven't got it already. And like all the other safe houses, there is someone chilling and making sure that this safe house is all running okay. Also, fun fact, it does actually say little lamplight if you clip through the wall. Now back on track, you may notice a windy road on your map. Well, this is Black Mountain, and just below is Neil's shack. This is homed by a friendly super mutant who tells you to turn back, as these guys are pretty hostile to humans. Nothing really note on his lonely shack except for him. You can convince him that you're coming up to Black Mountain to deal with all the super mutants, and he will actually help you out depending on your speech skill. So let's go and see Black Mountain. High up in the Mojave sits Black Mountain. This was once a pre-war satellite station used by the US military, mainly to monitor Chinese communications. But now though, it is home to the remnants of the Master's army from Fallout 1, led by none other than Tabitha, a Nightkin who has crowned herself leader and even hosts her own strange radio show broadcasting across the wastes. Black Mountain wasn't always this way though. Originally, Marcus and his super mutants lived here peacefully, but the constant use of stealth boys by the Nightkin drove them into paranoia and violence. Things got so bad that Marcus and his followers abandoned the mountain, leaving Tabitha and her loyalists behind. What remains are bands of super mutants in heavy armor and weaponry, and Nightkin enhanced with stealth technology. The area itself is designed as a roadblock by JSawyer, deliberately discouraging any new players from heading straight to New Vegas too early. But you can push through, but later in your playthrough, you'll find it's a well worth challenge. At the summit, you'll discover Raoul, a ghoul mechanic held prisoner and forced to keep the place running, and maybe fix Rhonda the robot for Tabitha. You can free him and make him your companion if you want, but that just won't make Tabitha very happy. Defeating her rewards you with some solid loot, including a unique RPG, some scavenger treasures, and even a collectible sheet of music. And with Black Mountain cleared, we've tackled one of the tougher challenges in the Mojave. Now imagine human evolution skipped you, and you decided to go visit Quarry Junction willingly. Well, this is the go-to place to become an all-you-can-eat buffet for Deathclaws. And there's quite a few of them, including an alpha and a mother. What used to be NCR territory, where they used all the limestone for their battles against the Legion, it has now been invested into these creatures. you are able to clear out the area, you can pick up some Deathclaw eggs for Red Lucy. This also frees up the location for Sloan for the NCR to move back in. And make sure to pick up that Fat Man and light machine gun. If you explore upwards onto the quarry, you'll find the Great Khan encampment. It simply looks like that the Khans were stuck up here by the Deathclaws, so I hope they enjoyed their time while they waited for the courier to clear them out for them. Now we have explored most of the Mojave, there is only 12 locations left. I hope that you're still here, my voice is dying, but let's go northwest. Near the top of the map, we can find a farm, which seems to be guarded by some vipers. It looks like they've just set up camp here and just chilling until you come along. You can find a mine or two lying around, so just make sure you don't tread on those. I just keep doing that. I'm noticing a theme in this video of me doing that. This is also where you can find an alien ship with some aliens further up if you have the Wild Wasteland perk. Not too far away from here is our last vault of the Mojave. Vault 22 is a pretty special vault. This is because this vault was inhabited purely by scientists. Their main goal was to work on plants to find a way to tackle world hunger. So this is actually a good cause for once. But after the bombs dropped, the scientists would continue their experiments and saw that the plants were getting rather big. In fact, they became aggressive. That's right, plants know how to throw hands. They would also produce spores in which would soon to infect the entire vault. This included the scientists who would then eventually turn into spore mutants. They did have a failsafe in case this would happen, but it was just too late and the whole vault would become a green haven for all plant and spore mutants alike. The story does actually extend where 118 survivors would come out of the vault and travel to Zion, but we'll leave that for another video. This vault is pretty big and rather annoying to navigate as it has 5 floors. The entrance, the oxygen recycling floor, the food production, common areas and the pest control floor. Every floor has rich level world building and unique items to loot, such as the unique laser rifle, food additives and the HEPA cartridge filters, which is needed for the Brotherhood of Steel mission. It is a cool vault, but it just has too much things going on and too many levels for my liking. Oh, but one of my favorite locations is the Brooks Tumbleweed Ranch, which can be located right at the top of the map. Now there isn't really anything interesting to loot, but there is Tumbleweed, guarded by a Nightkin. Now this Nightkin asks for all your caps, and if you decide to accept this amazing offer, you get to own all these tumbleweeds.
Ha ha, stupid human.
Which does nothing. You may have just got scammed a little. But fun fact, the devs actually planned to make these tumbleweeds follow you if you were going to buy it, and that would have just been hilarious. You could be like the tumbleweed cattle guy. I don't know what I'm saying, it's midnight, leave me alone. Now from here you may spot a home on the hills. This is the followers' safe house. Much like all the other major factions, you can also get a home if the followers like you. I think this is one of the more realistic safe houses in my opinion, which does have some solid loot inside, including a unique all-purpose science suit. Of course, you'll have someone drop by to give you a couple of chems, and the fridges will be restocked. Overall, it's not a bad home. As we continue up into the mountains, you may notice the environment changing, but maybe for the better because, you know, the game is mainly in the desert. Ruby Hill Mine is our next location. This cave does have a good amount of lake lurks that you gotta push through. And speaking of pushing through, you will find a unique variant of the displacer glove called Pushy, which isn't a bad weapon for any unarmed build. Underneath the water here, you can find a cool Easter egg of people playing cards. Also some explosives using the Ruby Hill key, if you ever need to blow more things up. Further up, you'll find another mine, and oh no, it's this one. Arguably one of the most dangerous locations in the game next to the quarry junction. This holds the legendary Cazador. You know it's bad when an Enclave soldier was killed here by them. So apart from that, it's a pretty basic cave. Just make sure to pick up the Enclave helmet while you're there. If we veer off the main path, we'll come across a bunker that isn't immediately accessible. This is the Enclave Remnants bunker. Following the destruction of the oil rig and the NCR's takeover of Navarro in Fallout 2, one group of the Enclave were able to retreat here, and it later served as a small vertibird refueling station before being forgotten. If you complete R.K. Gannon's companion quest, you can reunite the surviving Enclave soldiers, that being Cannibal Johnson, Judah Krieger, Daisy, and a few others. You can even recruit them to aid them in the Battle of Hoover Dam, which is a pretty epic way of ending your game. Inside the bunker you'll find an intact vertibird, some Enclave power armor, and a small operations station. It's a pretty rewarding quest if you decide to do it. Lastly, right in the corner we have the last ranger station, Foxtrot. This is probably the closest station to the Great Khans, making it a pretty hostile place, though it seems like they're pretty bored over here considering all the scotch bottles around. Now nothing really happens around here, and it seems like the devs did have bigger plans for this location. Apparently they were meant to have a ranger who was a super mutant called Chauncey. I mean, look at his tiny hat. They also had a deleted quest here, but it never really came to fruition. If I haven't said it already, it's a damn shame Obsidian had to cut development so short. Lastly, at the end of the mountains, we can find Jacobstown, an old ski resort made for tourists and leisure seekers. It is now homed to the remnants of the Master's army and Marcus's exiled group from Black Mountain. Marcus used to be sheriff of a town previous to this where the super mutants and humans coexisted, and he seeks to recreate that. He also wants to help the Nightkin with their stealth boy addiction, which is why an Enclave scientist, Henry, also lives here. By choice, by the way. We can actually help Henry with his research by going to find a Stealth Boy Mark II prototype in the cave close by. And of course, the NCR had to dip their toes in and cause problems. Apparently some mercs have been giving them trouble, and it's up to you how you deal with it.
I've always known when to fight and when to back down.
Up the hill, we can find Charleston Cave. Now this is a little bit different to all the other caves, because back in 2077, just before the bombs dropped, a guy decided he wanted to make his own shelter, and after being pushed away from all the vaults, he told no one about his little secret. After the war, a pack of Night Stalkers moved in, and it seems they have a cloak ability after chewing on the Mark II Stealth Boy a bunch of times. Pretty cool stuff. Inside you'll find a unique super sledge, the chewed Stealth Boy, and at the back, that small vault with a bunch of supplies inside. Now that we've explored basically every location, the last locations is only accessible at the end game. So let's go and tell Mr. House and start the Battle of Hoover Dam. But before the battle, Mr. House wants us to go to the El Dorado substation, which is controlled by the NCR. This location we already kind of crossed paths, which is located quite close to Helios 1. Now it seems like the NCR don't like you being around this area, but if you're wearing any sort of NCR outfits, you can easily just slip by. Or you can just get rid of them. It's up to you. Inside here, we can put the override chip for Mr. House, where you can transfer some very important electricity to the Lucky 38.
Legion are on the march, establishing a staging area east of their assault could begin at any moment.
And this is it, the major battle of Hoover Dam. I probably should have explored it before the battle, but it's just not as cool. Hoover Dam, the Hoover Dam, based on the real-life one in California. This serves a large amount of hydroelectric energy to the Mojave, and anyone that controls this controls Vegas. Interestingly, the Brotherhood of Steel actually had their eyes on this first, but you know, Elder Elijah, being mentally unstable, chose Helios 1 as his main priority. And that's when the NCR came along and decided to make a mission to take it, and that is exactly what they did in 2274. Mr. House, a little worried that the NCR controlling Hoover Dam, he decided to make a deal with the NCR along with the three tribes, that 95% of all power would go to the NCR territories, while 5% went to the Strip, and of course, unrestricted access to all the casinos. In just 3 years, the Legion rolled up and attacked Hoover Dam, but failed to take it. So everything is leading to this second battle of Hoover Dam. Inside we can see all the power plants, but only 50% of them are running full power. It has the Hoover Dam Visitors Center, the lower levels, and a few checkpoints. It's a pretty big location. You can also find some Chinese stealth suits in this place, which I thought was really weird, but this was actually a nod to the game Van Buren, as it turns out that the Chinese actually broke into Hoover Dam to sabotage it during the Great War. But this isn't official canon, as Van Buren was never completed, but a nice reference. If we keep fighting through the Legion, we will come to the Legate's camp. This is our last location and the finale of the entire game. It's a rather small Legion camp, but it is home to a very dangerous man called Legate Lanius. He is the second in command of Caesar himself, but honestly he's not that difficult to get rid of at this point. As we leave, the NCR blows up the gate, and we can finally end the game here, however you wish. I like this ending personally. And that is every single location in Fallout New Vegas. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. I really appreciate you holding out to the end of this video. There will be more New Vegas content coming very soon, and hopefully I will see you there.
This is where it all begins.